The state of Florida failed first-time homebuyers. Yes, they did help a lot of them and they did have some great programs, but in the end, they really ran out of money. So in this video, we're gonna talk about what the state of Florida did to help first-time homebuyers. We're gonna talk about the Hometown Heroes program and everything involved with it, as well as a lot of the shortcomings with the program. And then at the end of the video, we're also gonna talk about different strategies that you can use to actually get money to help you to buy a home with no strings attached. Plus, it doesn't have to be your first home. So now let's jump right into it. Let's start off with what the Hometown Heroes program was. So in the beginning, the Hometown Heroes program had a different kind of meaning than it ended up being at the end. So in the beginning, the Hometown Heroes program was specifically for those who were frontline workers. So people who were deemed essential during COVID. So these are occupations like that of firefighters, police, medical staff and personnel, as well as teachers. And the program was to help them get into their first home with down payment assistance programs. Then, however, the program transitioned to help all first-time homebuyers here in the state of Florida. Obviously, there's some different eligibility requirements, which we'll dive into, that you had to meet. So it wasn't for just any first-time homebuyer, but a good chunk of first-time homebuyers actually qualified for this program. And what the program was is a down payment assistance program. So you were able to get up to 5% of the loan amount to help you with your closing costs and down payments. So you did have a cap of $35,000 and a floor of $10,000. So let's say for sake of example, you're gonna take a loan out for $200,000 to buy a home. You would get 5% of that amount. So essentially you would get $10,000 to use towards your closing costs and or your down payment, which actually does help quite a lot of people. And then you paired this with an FHA loan, so you're putting 3.5% down. So this helps knock out quite a big majority of your closing costs. You probably only come out of pocket only a couple $1,000s on top of your down payment. And like I said, it wasn't available for everyone, so the eligibility requirements were strict, but also kind of loose at the same time. So for starters, you had to be a first-time home buyer. From there, you had to be a full-time employee, and they deemed full-time employees working 35 plus hours a week. Then you had to have a credit score of at least 640 plus. So if you had a 700, you were good to go. From there, it had to be your primary residence because it still is an FHA loan, so you couldn't be buying an investment property and using this money towards it, but there is a way to do it, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And the next thing was there was income caps by county. So you couldn't be making like $300,000 and be applying for the Hometown Heroes program hoping to get some money because you just didn't want to come out of pocket money. So the income caps did vary by county. So you had to be below 150% of the average median income in your area. And then, like I said, there were specific properties that you could use this for. So pretty much anything that you could use an FHA loan for. So that includes single families, townhomes, condos, and I know condos are a tricky subject right now, especially in the state of Florida. And if you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, I'm gonna link a video right up here about kind of the issues that condos are going through. I mean, there are some condos that accept FHA, but we'll jump off that. And then multifamily as well. So anything from 1 to 4 units. So remember how I was saying you couldn't use it for an investment property? Well, really the best way to use it was to buy an investment property. So to buy a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, you're still gonna live in one of the units and then you're gonna rent out the other ones. So essentially, you're just performing a normal house hack, but now that house hack's on steroids because you're gonna use this down payment assistance money from the Hometown Heroes program to cover all of your closing costs. So you could pretty much get a quadplex, come out of pocket much less money and use that money to either renovate the property, value add to the property, or even furnish it if you're gonna rent one of the units short term. So it gave you a lot more possibilities within the house hacking realm. And then the uses for that money, like I was saying before, you could only use it pretty much for your down payment and your closing costs. You couldn't use it to cover your appraisal gap. So let's say the home appraised for $350, but you offered $375. You couldn't use that money to cover that $25,000 difference. And you also couldn't use that money to pay off some of your debt to help your debt to income ratio. Literally just your down payment, closing costs, which isn't a bad thing, but you know, some people like to get, hey, it's free money in a sense. What can I do with it? So that's pretty much the gist of the program. And now this is where the issues start and where some of the shortcomings you start to see. Let's start with number one, they ran out of money. They were predicting to last about 6 to 8 months. They really only lasted like 2 or 3 months. I mean, July 1st it opened up to everyone. And I remember around the end of August 2023, I had a couple buyers who were looking for money and the program was out of money. You couldn't do anything. So that was one way that Florida failed people. Another way that kind of failed people is it was a little bit misleading. It seems like, hey, I'm gonna get a free $35,000. Number one, no, you don't get a free $35,000. There's no such thing as free in real estate like that. So you could get up to $35,000. Most people weren't getting $35,000 to start with. On top of that, it's not free. So let's just call, for sake of example, you were gonna get the $35,000. It is a 0% non-amortizing deferred loan. However, you still have to pay it back. It's not forgiven. So that loan still has to be paid back, and it gets triggered to be paid back either when you sell, transfer the deed, you move out, or you refi. Speaking of refi, you really couldn't refi. Most people were locked in at a pretty high interest rate. So you're gonna be locked in around 7.25%, about 7.5% is what we were seeing on average with a lot of people. And if you were gonna refi, you had to pay that money back. So imagine you got $35,000. Now you go to refinance because the rates dropped and you get a lower rate, but you don't have the equity yet. You're gonna have to come out of pocket $35,000 to cover the difference. A lot of people couldn't do that. That's why you were getting the down payment assistance in the beginning. So that's another issue in and of itself. And a lot of people who also were looking to use it to buy investment properties, when you go to move out of that property as an FHA loan, you're gonna have to refi. Or if you're gonna transfer it to a company or something like that, you're also gonna have to pay it back. So these are just some nuances that some people didn't really look into. They just saw, hey, I'm getting free money. This is awesome. I'm not gonna have to do anything. Where do I sign up? It's not really. But now, what if I told you there actually is a way to get somewhat free money? It's still not free, but you don't have to have any strings attached and you don't owe anyone anything at the end of the day. And that's called seller credits. The seller can actually credit the buyer money to use towards their closing costs and their prepaids. And the best part is you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. Anyone can use it. So you can be buying an investment property, your second property, your fifth property, your sixth property, you get it. Need any kind of property. And I know you're not really owing anyone. At the end of the day, you are kind of just rolling it into your loan amount, but it does make a lot of sense, especially if you don't want to come out of pocket money. And there are limits on the percentage of money that you can get, depending on the loan you're going to get, obviously. So for FHA, the limit is 6% of the sales price. VA, the limit is 4% of the sales price. And then for conventional, it does vary. If you're putting less than 10% down, you can get up to 3%. If you're putting 10 to 25% down, you can get up to 6%. If it's 25% or more down, you can get up to 9%. And then if it's an investment property, it doesn't matter what percent you're putting down, you can get up to 2%. So it does kind of vary, but at the end of the day, it's still money that you don't have to come out of pocket. So the best way to kind of explain how this works is, let's say you're gonna buy a $400,000 house. You offer them $400,000, but you want a $10,000 credit at closing to be used towards closing costs and prepaid. So essentially, you're just gonna be financing your closing costs instead of coming out of pocket. On average, that $10,000 is gonna cost you about an extra $100 a month, but you save $10,000 out of pocket. You can now use this money towards your closing costs, buying down your rate, or whatever you want to do to help put yourself in a better situation moving forward. And like I said, I think this helps a lot of people and it's a great way to get creative with it. Just less money out of pocket. Obviously, it depends on the situation, but you can use it for a variety of things, especially with the rates being the way they are right now, kind of using it to buy down. And then when rates do drop eventually, then you can kind of refinance and then your payment will come down. So let me know in the comments down below if you've ever used a seller finance before and what you use that money towards. And if you're looking to buy or sell anywhere here in South Florida, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can email me, joe@theveragroup.com. Until next video.